Hello, everybody. My name is Kelly Meyer. I am part owner of Project Find Your Fire with my wife, April. ProjectFindYourFire.com. That's my little plug right there. I am an international transformational coach, speaker, and author. I've been doing one-on-one coaching, group coaching. I've been facilitating workshops, doing public speakings for almost 30 years now. We have also developed a game based on our core values of growth, relationships, and wellness. And so that in a nutshell is what I do. And when I work with people, it could be for any number of reasons. Maybe it's depression or anxiety, fears, phobias, anger that you want to get rid of. I am NLP certified, I'm board certified coach. And maybe it's just leveling up as a person. Maybe you've lost track of who you are and what your purpose is and your passions are. And you just need to sort of spend some time rediscovering and getting to the next level of yourself. So that in a nutshell is who I am.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. I like that, man. I already have a question. So you said you've been doing this for 30 years or something related to this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Man, what do you think about like the evolution of just like speaking as a career? Because like, so 30 years would be what, early, was it 80s or 90s?
90s.
Yeah, I'm 31. I don't know. I didn't know that. I was born in 93. Yeah, so early 90s. So what, man, so just the evolution of what like it was then and then now with social media, technology, we have YouTube. I mean, I just imagine that, all those things would just explode a speaking or at least opportunities to connect with other people. I don't know.
Yeah, it really has. And it's been, I kind of equate it to like the music industry or the film industry and all of the arts, really. And I think that speaking is really kind of an art form in itself. But, think back to the 90s when you were growing up, the late 90s, early 2000s when you were just an early teen, the music industry and speaking and theatrics were different because you needed to go to a studio in order to record. You needed to go to a sound stage in order to do your film work. You needed to get onto a physical stage in order to present your material. And that's the way it was when I started. I mean, you had to be in a physical location with people sitting in front of you. But now anybody can do it. Like anybody can deliver their message. Anybody can produce their own song or their own or movie, which I think has been great in a lot of ways because there are a lot of people who have really intriguing stories that we would usually never hear, except that they have the option of, the digital platform now. And the same is true with music and movies and stuff. I've seen amazing little short movies come from these independent guys, and the same is true with speaking too. I've heard amazing stories from somebody who we would otherwise never hear from.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, there's no doubt that we have our, our battles or our falls, our pitfalls today in the time that we're in. But I think as far as like, putting information out there and having information out there, I remember, so I was born in 93. And so I was like right on the, I guess maybe the turning point of like from cassette tapes to like CDs,
Yeah.
And if you hear like some of the, I think Zig Ziglar, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. I think he was a motivational speaker or something around that time.
Yeah.
Like some of his, even Tony Robbins, even some of Tony Robbins' early stuff, like you'll hear them refer to tapes, like my tapes or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think even people that were born like after 2005, 10 knew what that was, but it's like, you got to think about like sharing that information, sharing a cassette. I guess you would, maybe a person would borrow it, or, if you just didn't buy it, you would borrow it from somebody or what. But it's like, now we have that message, and there's like even, now with AI, you can take that message, a digital copy of that, and you can simultaneously post it to multiple different platforms
Yeah.
and reach, just exponentially more, people. So I don't know, man. I just think like it's just crazy the advancement in technology, especially as it comes to like speaking, social media, the content creation. I mean, it's like another world. It's a completely different world.
Yeah. It really is. And it's, like I said, there are a lot of great things about that. It does have its pitfalls, though, too, because not everybody should have an audience,
Right.
depending on your message. And, this gives them a platform, though. Not
Mm,
every band should be heard in public, but here we are. And they become viral hits, whether they want to be or not. So, it goes both ways. And, my background is in education. And what I used to tell my students is, I was born in 69, so I'm advanced in my maturity. But as we were growing, we'd hit these points. We were listening to the 8-track cassettes in our car, and we thought, man, this is cool.
yeah.
How much better could this get? And then they came out with the cassette. The cassette became the thing. And how much better could this possibly get than the cassette tape? And then
Hmm.
CDs came out, and the mind is exploding because how much better could this get? And I think, where we are right now, and right now we're talking like, how much better could this get?
Hmm.
There is something. We just don't know what it is yet. And that excites me. Like, what does the future hold? And that's true for us too, as people. Like,
Hmm.
even though we are feeling like we're living a good life fulfilled. And I talk to people and they're like, no, I don't need that personal growth stuff. I've got what I want. I'm like, but there's more. You don't understand. There's more. There is better. We just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I agree with that. I think there is better. I don't think we know maybe what it is. I will say this. I think AI is clearly like in the front and center of, the next big thing. I mean, it's already here, but like people are talking about the potentials of it. I tell people, I said a couple episodes ago, um, once AI gets incorporated with vehicles, we're really going to be like and it may already be, I don't know. It may be in Teslas or whatever. My truck is a 21, so I don't know what the 25s or whatever, what they're doing these days. Um, but like I think AI is like front and center of like the next big thing. But I don't know. I'm kind of concerned. I would say maybe not concerned. I'm just aware of that because I don't know that the whole, the Terminator type thing. I don't know if that's like a rational thing to be concerned about. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm more concerned about like becoming too dependent on AI to where, and I don't know if you saw this in your career with education. If we become too dependent on AI to where it starts to write papers for us and develop everything that we should really be creating mentally on our own, and we just get so dependent on that, and then you got to think like you do that over a couple of decades. I mean, what does that do to the general IQ of the population? I don't know. Um, and I don't know. I think we should use it as a resource or a tool, and not let it use us, basically.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I know some people who use Chat GPT to, I need a paragraph or I need a greeting card. I need a something written, a blog or whatever. And I'm going to use Chat GPT. And I think, but that eliminates the human aspect of it. It
Hmm.
eliminates the creativity. It eliminates the the spiritual connection that we have with what we are delivering. And it's not just in writing those documents. I got out of teaching before AI really came along. Uh, in 2016 is when I left teaching, but people were already, plagiarism was huge. And I would tell my students that if you use Wikipedia as a scholarly source, I will fail you right away because it is not. And they still try.
Hmm.
But something interesting you brought up about the Tesla and driving when we were in Phoenix, and maybe you're already aware of this. My daughter goes to school in Phoenix. And so we went to visit her. It was a weekend, a family weekend at the college. And we're driving around town, and her fiance starts talking about these driverless taxis. I said, no way,
Hmm.
shut up. No. And so he's like, yeah, there goes one right now. And there's another one. And there's another one. And it had all the sensors on it. So we're talking about this. And finally, we decide we have to take a driverless taxi just for the experience. And so you get the app. It's just like at Uber's, and you order the taxi, and it shows up from the exact spot where you ordered it from. So it's not looking for a front door. It's not looking for a specific parking lot. Wherever you order it from, that's where it's going to show up. And we decided just to like go to the mall. It was only like maybe a mile away. And it was really pretty cool. You get in, there's no driver. The steering wheel is doing the thing. And it didn't bother us at all. It was a safe drive. And I felt like we should have been bothered by it, but
Hmm.
we weren't. So it was interesting. It was very interesting.
Was this thing on some kind of like transit system, like a
No,
rail in the
it
pavement?
was um, so there were 5 cities that have this. I did a little research. Phoenix, Atlanta, seems like maybe Dallas or Fort Worth, somewhere in that area. Um, Something in California have these cars.
Hmm.
And now there are two, they're called Waymos, Waymo.
Is that the brand or the make of the vehicle?
No, it was what was the make of the vehicle? A Jaguar
Oh wow, okay.
was the make of the vehicle, I think, if I remember right. No, Waymo is the company who is driving these cars. So there are two different kinds of Waymos. One is fully autonomous. So it is completely computerized to sense lights, um, traffic, pedestrians, everything. Now, my kids are in robotics, high school
Hmm.
robotics, so I know how these sensors work, but this is like uber sensor. Like, this is
Right.
great stuff. Um, and then there is, um, that was Waymo 1, and then Waymo 2 is actually driven by somebody off site. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
imagining like somebody sitting in a cubicle with these screens at a steering wheel driving us around.
That's
So
crazy, man. I'm just trying to think of this from like an insurance standpoint. Like, how do you insure a driverless vehicle? Like, what happened? I mean, because do you go to the manufacturer because they're going to be like, oh, well, we're not responsible. I mean, who's responsible? You know?
yeah, and our question was, if there's an accident or it gets caught speeding or something, who gets the ticket?
Hmm. Well, and so that's a good point too, because like there's a big concern about AI taking over jobs. And the argument against that is, at least one of the arguments is that like AI, at least the AI that we have right now, is not at a place where it can do like critical thinking. Like, the real world is not like, I mean, it may be a computer simulation, we don't know, but it's not like a computer simulation where everything is like, hard and set facts.
Yeah,
And so like, if this car is programmed to, as if it's got sensors or whatever, I mean, what happens if something all of a sudden changes? Like, can the car adapt? Can the AI adapt to that? I mean, I think that would be sort of my concern, because I think those sensors are actually pretty good. Like, even the Tesla's self-driving is fairly decent to be a self-driving car. Um, but it's that sudden change, that critical. At least my understanding of the AI that we have, and nowhere in the near future, hopefully nowhere in any future, but nowhere in the near future, can AI do that sort of critical thinking, that we really all need to exist.
yeah, and that's a great point because now we're bridging into the aspect of living a life fulfilled.
Hmm.
And are we allowing AI to fulfill our lives and neglecting us as humans, as people, and our minds and our hearts, our spirits, and our complete being? It's one of those things where um, people are happy with their because of their identity, but at some point they're not going to be that person anymore, and that's when they lose themselves. So if we rely so much on AI to dictate our lives, I guess, are we really fulfilling living fulfilled because that becomes our identity. AI, what we write, what we say, what we do. We can create videos. You could, now you have a screenshot of me. You could create a video of me doing God knows what through
Right.
AI or saying whatever you want me to say. But then that becomes our identity. But at some point, we're going to lose that identity. And when that happens, then we're going to realize that we've become lost all this time, but we don't know that we're lost. It's like um, lots of times people believe that if I have the thing, the car, um, the boat, the house, all of those things, then I can be happy. If I can have the resources, if I have the time, the support, the energy, the money, whatever it might be, then I can finally be happy. But it works. I'm going to cross bridges here and try not to get too much on a tangent because I tend to do that sometimes.
They are good. Me too.
But sometimes it works crossways with those two traps that we fall in, either the thing or the resource. So if I have more time to spend on my job, I can get that promotion and get more money so I can finally buy that boat. And that means I can finally be happy.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is that's not going to make you happy. And the same is true with the AI world that we're starting to live in. Now we can create these even greater false identities. I mean, with social media, we already have false identities. And now we can dictate further our false identities by creating images and sounds and these likenesses of us that aren't really us, but that's our identity.
Right.
Right? So when we are doing that, we're actually furthering ourselves from our real self.
I love this point because this makes me think about this whole philosophy of like you're talking about this separation of identity and like this we're basically taking an identity that's not really us maybe or I think that it all comes down to the first word of AI artificial. This is not like who we are. And so I think there's two things to this, two branches to this. First of all, I think we as people as the human connection that we have with other people, we obviously don't have that with AI and we don't have that with the virtual space, even though what we're doing right now, the virtual meetings, I understand that all that can save time. And that's going to be my second point. But we have these things that really make the human existence what it is. And, you talk about this AI, uh, basically emotional validation. Like there is people who have seen this and now they're tapping into AI companionship,
Right.
for like, and that's, man, I think that's a very dangerous road to go down because it makes everything again that we value as the human connection, which I think is at the very top of the list. It makes that an artificial thing. And so, like, as we pursue that more and more and more, what does that do to the human race? I always bring up this. It's a crazy example, but I always bring up this example. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wall-E, the cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how at one point of the movie, like everybody's kind of like on their screens or whatever, and this little robot's going around kind of doing everything. And, you see the people, their muscles have atrophied and their bones have atrophied. They're like way smaller than they used to be and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's just a movie, but like, is it really though? Like, is that a potential possibility if we're not careful with this thing? Another thing I was going to say about that was the saving time thing. So like I think most people use AI to be more productive, to save time, to eliminate menial tasks, dangerous tasks, whatever it is. But what if we get so accustomed to that and all these companies start incorporating AI and they're just, productivity is through the roof, whatever. Well, most AI is like the fee for it is very small compared to like what it'll do productivity wise. So let's just say a decade, 2 decades down the road, we get accustomed to that. That is sort of built into our system, our commercial system. What happens if that goes away? Like what happens if something like the AI is stripped immediately and then bam, all these companies lose that major resource and it's just like, what is that economic collapse? I mean, I don't know what happens at that point, you know? So I don't know. I think it's safe. I think we should be safe and aware about this. But we should not use AI to basically dig ourselves in a hole that we become dependent on it. Like I said, with the whole commercial system, the businesses being dependent on it. But I think also, and probably more important, is like what you were talking about, the identity, the human connection. Not replacing what is really invaluable with something that is clearly artificial. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And there are a lot of great points there. In response to your Wally analogy, um, all you have to do is look at the physical stature of most Americans right
Yep.
now and see where we're at. Um, and we talk about, 2 years down the road, let's say the industries are using AI. What if that goes away? What if it breaks down? What if whatever? And we can take a microcosm of that example. Like if we took a even a broad demographic, it wouldn't even have to be teenagers. Let's take 15-year-olds all the way up to 60-year-olds or whatever, and let's put them on an island without a phone.
Mm.
And that's they're going to be lost, most of
Oh
them.
yeah.
I think some of us who are older, who have lived without phones and knows what that's like. But even I, who grew up without a phone and knows what it's like to spend all my time on a bicycle and different things, I today rely on that form of communication. That's how I do my business, a bulk of it. Some of it here is on my laptop, but that's the communication. All of the aspects of doing business and all of these different things are on my phone. That's how I communicate with my family and my friends. And taking that away, and now that I say that, like, I have 4 kids. They're 28. And my two boys are the oldest, 28 and 24. And then my girls are my youngest two, 21 and going to be 18 next week. So if you were to ask me what are their phone numbers, I don't think I could tell you all of their phone
Right.
numbers, right? I have them in my phone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yes, if that goes away, even us oldsters are going to be affected. But I think there's an entire generation who are just going to be lost. And if you think of that on a global table, when corporations start to go down from that, I think we might be in just a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. That is a really good point because, we talk about this human connection and now we're talking about the phones, the social media. Man, it's crazy because like every once in a while I'll do like a social media fast. I won't do social media for a week or two, whatever it is. And I've noticed that my interactions with people are always better during those periods. And I don't know if it's because I value it more because maybe I'm not, which I don't really communicate on social media a lot anyways, but it's like I mean, by definition, like just the nature of social media, you're on the outside looking in to like the best parts of other people's life, you know.
Mhm.
And I think especially if you talk to a lot of dating coaches or anybody sort of in that space, they'll tell you that either one side or the other, men or women or whoever, there's some contention there on meeting, potential, whether it's a partner, a business person, I mean, it's almost it's not funny because it's actually kind of sad, but it's almost an obsolete skill to be able to introduce yourself to a person these days. Not just a partner, intimate partner. I'm talking about a professional introduction,
Right.
and it's crazy because and I think like so I got my first cell phone. I was born in '93. I think I got my first cell phone. I was maybe 15, somewhere around there, but I certainly didn't have a cell phone as a child, running around with the, I was like you said, the bike, playing out in my mom, my mom used to have to bring us inside, when it was getting dark in the summertime, it'd be 7 or 8 o'clock, but there's just like an entire generation that doesn't know that in person, like everything is almost everything is digital to them. And I don't know, uh, how long ago it was that you were in the education system, but I don't know if you saw this with like your students, those late teens, early 20s. I don't know if there was an issue there with those that, basically forming connections with your peers. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it was very different. There was, towards the end of my education career, there was a lot of time spent on phones,
mm,
and I wasn't one of those professors that limited phone use. I left it up to a choice. And I always was clear and open about that. I said, if you want to spend, because people take notes on their phone.
Right.
So that's fair. So if I see you on your phone, it's possible that you're taking notes. So I understand that. But I was always open in saying that if you want to spend time on your phone while I'm lecturing, that's up to you. If you miss the notes, if you do poorly on your quizzes and tests, that's also up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can use that tool for whatever you want to use it for, but understand that there are consequences if you don't use it properly.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
my kids were always like 16 probably before any of them ever had a phone. Because
Mm-hmm.
once you're out, with your friends and driving
Right.
around and stuff, I want you to have that access. But I would have to text them while they were at school some sort of information that I need to pick you up from school, right after school. So no messing around, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'll respond and I'll say, why are you responding to me? You're supposed to be in school. So, you know,
Yeah. So my high school was like, I was in high school 2008, 9, 10. Well, I graduated at 11, so whatever time period that was. But we were not allowed to have phones. Like we could have them, but they had to be off or whatever. Um, but eventually, I think they did away. Like I think that rule kind of disappeared, and now at the very same school that people have, I mean, the phones are ubiquitous. There's everywhere. But yeah, I don't know, man. So I didn't really realize we were going to go down this road today, but hey, I'm glad we're here because because we're talking about, I think what it all really comes down to, this whole conversation is like the human connection and valuing the people that are around you. But I want to kind of backtrack just for a minute to this identity thing, because I think this is really important. I think just from like the people that I talk to and things that I hear, a lot of people have, it's almost like either a false sense of identity or they don't know how to pursue that sense of identity for themselves. And I think a big factor of that is like we're not aware of the fact that we have beliefs about ourselves that are not even our beliefs. They were instilled in us from whether it was an education system or a religious institution or a family, whatever it was. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad to take beliefs from, but I think that when they come to a certain point about like what you're capable of or who you are or, what your life is supposed to be because the person before you was this way, I don't know. I think, so that, like, I can't really blame these people for having that sort of, uh, I guess maybe a lack of identity because of everything they've kind of been through up to this point. But at the same time, the awareness, I think, is still their responsibility to change that.
it's funny you should bring that up because that philosophy is actually on our website. So if you go
Oh
to
wow.
the website, you'll see that. And what we always say, where we base what we do on is this. Well, really two things. One is when people ask me what I do, I say, well, I tell people the things they don't want to hear, and I make them do the things they don't want to do so that they can become the people they never knew they could become. But we as humans tend to become who we believe that we are supposed to become based on our outside influences, like you mentioned.
Mm,
So our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our own children, um, religious institutions, our schools, they all have an idea of who we should become in our life. I'm not even joking. My senior year, I was voted most likely to be institutionalized. Now, had I lived up to that prophecy, who knows?
mm,
Instead, I became a professor.
right.
So, um, what we do then is we help people unbecome who they became and because they believed they were supposed to become that, and we help them re-become who they should have become in the first place, which is their true authentic self. And identity is huge in that, and we all fall into a trap sometimes in our own identities, whether they're virtual or real, in real time. I work with people and say, well, who are you? And then they'll say, well, I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a cashier, whatever it is. And that's the pitfall, because there will come a time in your life when you're not that. Like,
Mhm.
I am a coach, I am a speaker, I am an author. There will come a time where I'm not that. And when that happens, I'm going to lose my identity and then I'm going to be lost.
Yep.
Instead, what I teach people to do is to discover what was it about that that made you that person. So, in other words, for a successful businesswoman, I'm a successful businesswoman. No, what made you a successful businesswoman is that you are determined,
Right.
you persevere, you are hardworking. Those things they'll never take from you. That part of that identity you will never lose. There will come a day when you're not a successful businesswoman. But when you discover all of those things that made you that, I'm a mom. This is a tricky one because women uh, between the ages of about 35 and 50, that's when I see them because this is where their role of mom changes. So they always identify as mom, but the kids grow up, they leave the nest. And now you're still a mom, but you're not the same mom that you used to be. Your roles have changed. And so when that happens, they lose who they are. They feel like they've, lost their purpose and their passion in their life. But in reality, what they are is not mom. What they are is loving, compassionate, kind, generous, forgiving. Those are all the attributes that made you a beautiful mom. Now, you're never going to be the mom that you always were. That's always going to change. But you will always be those attributes. And that's what can boost you into whatever your next role is.
Man, I love how you worded that because I think that aligns with something that I believe myself. Like, because I tell people all the time, the best way to achieve a goal or a thing or a career or whatever it is to become the person who can do that. I don't think that we achieve goals. We become the person who can make the goals happen, and then we do things that person can do because we are that person. So that's I think you said that beautifully. The way that it's not that you are a successful entrepreneur. You are disciplined, determined,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Um, I want to go back a couple steps. We were talking about when we first started talking about this. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think about people pleasing, like the because and this is kind of related to identity. I want to get your thoughts on this. I was talking to a guy a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about people pleasing. Like he had this thing where he was like he didn't really feel like he was accepted by his peers or whoever, and he was like he was for a while in his life he wanted to people please and like be the person that everybody liked. And my response to him was like, okay, well, you can do these things. You can go against your own values and be somebody that you are not to be liked by these other people, and they may like you. But the question is, will you like yourself? If you go against what you think you should be, are you, and I think, I don't know. I think a lot of times for most of us, the answer to that would probably be no, because it's not like that. The validation from that person or from that group to the acceptance of that group, it can't be more valuable than the love that you have for yourself if you know that you are on the path that you're supposed to be on based on who you believe that you are. Assuming that what you believe about yourself is the correct thing.
That is true. And there were a couple thoughts that I had as you were talking about that. And the first is that to thine own self be true. I mean, that's what it all comes down to. And when it comes to trying to please people, that means you're trying to meet their expectations of who you should be again.
Mm,
And so by doing that, you might actually be sacrificing your own values and your own beliefs. And it's one of the things that came to my brain as you were talking. And if it seems like off tangent, it won't be because I'll come back to it. Is Robert Sapolsky. He was an animal biologist. He loved studying zebras, and I heard him talk about the zebra story one time. Um, and he would say that zebras are supposed to be camouflaged, and if you look at a zebra out on the savannah, they're obviously not camouflaged. The black and white stripes stand out as bold as anything. But what a zebra is interesting about is, or what is interesting about a zebra is that they're not camouflaged against the landscape, they're camouflaged against each other.
Mm.
So a lion who is watching the herd of zebras doesn't see a singular zebra to attack. Instead, it sees this giant mass moving back and forth across the landscape. Now, biologists figured this out and were having a problem studying a zebra. And so they would, watch a zebra and try to take a note and look back up at the zebra and couldn't figure out what zebra they were watching. So they had this bright idea that they would go out in their Jeeps and hit the hindquarters with this red rag or painted with red paint. And guess what happened to the zebras that got painted? The lion
They got
ate
eaten.
them
Yeah.
because they stood out now from the herd. What's interesting is people do the same thing. There is safety within the herd. Acceptance is the key to survival. And think about that in a lot of different aspects. First, we can think about teenagers who work really hard to be accepted by their peers. They have to fit in with the group. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to be the zebra with their hindquarters painted red for the lion to attack. They have to fit in with that group because that acceptance is the key to their survival. What are they sacrificing? That's a whole nother story. I mean, think about it within your own job. If you work for a company, you have to fit into the company because if you don't, you're going to be eliminated. So it's a figurative survival in this case. So if you aren't accepted by the company, then of course you're fired. And think about it, in all of these different aspects, that acceptance is really how we survive through life. Even if you live alone on top of a mountain, you have to navigate your life to be accepted by nature in order to survive, literally. And if you don't, then you'll perish, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, people pleasing, there is an aspect of this that relies back or goes back to the zebra and the thought that acceptance leads to survival. So, if you begin to people please, yes, you're sacrificing something of yourself. Maybe you aren't. But at the same time, your goal is survival within that group. One of the things that I teach people right off the bat, and especially when I'm working with teenagers, is who are you? And we talked about that identity. And that's a hard question to answer. Who are you? An easier question to answer is who are you not?
Mm.
And if I can get people to identify those things that they are not, those people, those places, those things, those ideas, those thoughts, the language that don't align to them, you have no choice but to end up with who you are, even though you at first aren't able to label that. And so if you find yourself people pleasing, going back to that question, maybe the question should be, are these my people? And if they're not, find new people, and then you won't have to please them.
That is a really good way to phrase that. Because as you were thinking, or as you were talking about all this, I was thinking like, oh, and I know this is my subjective experience, but I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know that I could, even if survival is the goal, I don't know that I could, force myself to fit into the herd if I, maybe didn't feel like that was for me. And again, this is from a real life example for myself. Cause I say this, I've told the story a couple times on the podcast. When I started, so I have a landscaping company outside of this. That's like one of the big things that I'm working on right now. I will be 32 in April of this year. And I started it right before I turned 21. It was right before my 21st birthday. So I've been working on this thing for a while. But man, when I was like 20 years old, and this is no lie, I probably had 40 jobs, close to 40 jobs between 16 and 20. I mean, I worked everywhere. Um, but like, I remember back then thinking to myself, like, man, I really want to do this thing. Like, I really want to start a business. I think I can make this work. I think I can do this. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I was around people who were twice, three times my age in some cases. And they were, I don't know, happy is a very, not a good way to phrase it, but they were content, it seemed like, with the job. Some of these jobs were warehousing, manufacturing, decent jobs, decent paying jobs, benefits, the whole thing. And it almost made me feel, you know, that like not like ungrateful and selfish. And at a certain, for a certain time period, it made me feel like I was doing something wrong because I wanted to do this when people around me, I guess the herd, so to speak, in this example, thought that where they were at was okay. And it may be, I don't know. But I don't know, man, just my subjective experience to that. It was like, I don't know, this might not be the right path for me. Like right now as a 20-year-old, and what do we know at 20? I don't know. What do I know at 30? I mean, who knows? But like the way I feel about this right now, this is the path that I should take. And I don't know, I just felt something in me that I was supposed to do that. And I look back on it, that's been one of the best decisions I've ever made, is to start a business. Uh, it hasn't been easy by no means. This has been a very, very interesting decade, to say the least. But I don't know. Again, that's my subjective experience. I like the way you phrase it, because it gives me a different perspective on it. It's like, I don't know. I just appreciate. I guess what I'm trying to say is I appreciate the different view on that.
And it's interesting because even though I teach that, I also tell a similar story because I was the zebra that stuck his head out
Hmm.
and risked the lions. So when I tell the zebra story, I use that analogy because humanistically, that's a that's a pretty good label that we put on people. So, my story growing up, I was always sort of the black sheep. I didn't spend a lot of time where I was supposed to be, school mostly.
Hmm.
And I was, I don't know, I wasn't even in high school yet. So I tell this story sometimes when I speak, so you're going to get it here. But I was on my way down to the pool hall during the day. It was in the morning, and I went there a lot. And so I walked in the door, and I noticed at the very end of the bar there was an old man who got off of his stool, and he was walking towards the front door as I was walking towards the back, and he stopped dead in front of me, and he looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Kelly." And he looked at me for what seemed like forever, and then he said, "No, you're not.
Hmm.
The sooner you figure that out, the better off you'll be." And he walked out the door, and I thought, what a weirdo. Here I am, just a scrawny little junior high punk. I'm here to shoot some pool and being harassed by some drunk guy in a bar on a morning. I thought, what a weirdo. And so I went back and I started telling the story of the old man. This old man, what a crazy old man. Crazy old drunk guy bothering me in the morning. But it was shortly after that I went through that teenage phase that we all go through. And it was the discovery phase where we try to figure out who we are, what we represent, and where we fit into this life. And when I hit that phase and I was feeling lost and trying to discover who I was, it was the old man's words that came back to me. The sooner you figure it out, the better off you'll be. And so I don't know what it was, 15 maybe, decided, okay, this is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to represent. And this is where I'm going to fit into the life. Was it the right choice? No. But at least I took a stand. This is who I'm going to be. And I did that as I was growing up because we all encounter those moments in our life where we have to sort of reevaluate who we are. I'm 55 and I still hit this moment every once in a while. And it's still the old man's words that come back to me. The sooner you figure it out, the better off you'll be. Is it always going to be correct? No, no. but at least you're going to take a stand and you're going to move forward, and then you can correct course as you move. That's all fine. That's what life is about. But don't hem and haw and jump back and forth over fences trying to decide who you are. Just like you, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going all in for it. And that was the correct thing.
Well, that's I really appreciate that story, man, because I think it highlights the importance of continuous personal growth. I feel like if you ever meet a person and they whatever, I don't know, they're just say they're 20, 40, 60, whatever it is, and they say, "Oh yeah, I have all things figured out. I'm exactly where I need to be." It's just like, "Whoa, dude, what do you got going on over there?" I mean, because I don't know. Like somebody said this to me one time, um, that they just feel the need to constantly grow or improve, and I was like, well, that will probably ensure that you always do. Like if you always feel the need to do that, that's going to ensure that you do in fact grow and improve. Because it's just like, man, what a hell of a thing for somebody to say, oh, I'm good where I'm at. I'm just gonna, what I don't know. And I guess there's different motivations for that, but I think you're right. I think that's what it's all about, is that sort of, continuously maybe finding out who we are. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. Like it's like continuously finding out who you are. It sounds even strange to say, but I get it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very true. I mean, we as humans change. I mean, growth happens with us. The world changes around us. So we are constantly in a state of flux. And I always use the analogy, and I actually hear that a lot. No, I'm good. I'm good. I got it all figured out. Life is perfect for me. But I use the analogy of, imagine standing in an empty swimming pool. Life around you is going to start to change, as it does for everybody. The pool, let's say, is starting to fill with water. So now you have two choices. You can either be good where you are, or you can start to swim. And that's what it comes down to. It's funny because when my wife and I do workshops together, we always provide a workbook. Something like this is actually the book I have next to me for the Revive Your Life workshop. But I'll be presenting the workshop. Usually I do most of the presenting, and April, my wife, will come in with her bits of wisdom when she sees that's a good time to put it in, which is beautiful. But almost always she will have whatever book we're working with, and she'll be off on the side actually doing the work in the book that I'm having everybody else do. And I try to emphasize to them that, even though we've been doing this for a very, very long time, we constantly still do the work. I still need to do the work. And I point out too, look over here at the corner, this is April, who's been teaching this material for as long as I have almost, and she's still doing the work. So there's no reason why you guys can't do the work, because there's always something more. And I tell people too that it's the 1% thing, that personal growth isn't about us. It's about all of those people around us.
Right.
Yeah, I want to be better, but I need to be better for everybody around us. My kids need me to be a better dad, just a little bit than I was yesterday. April needs me to be a better husband, just a little bit more than I was yesterday. My friends need me to be a better friend, just a little bit more than I was yesterday. If we can be 1% better tomorrow than we are today, at the end of the year, who wouldn't want to be 365 times the person we are right now?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I like that, man, because this isn't one of the, I don't really get into this whole the dating, like talking about the dating stuff too much, but I do every once in a while talk on men's issues or speak on men's issues, and I think that's one of the things that I say that I think maybe sometimes might get misinterpreted, which is that if you are improving yourself in the right way, everybody that's around you or connected to you should benefit from that.
Absolutely.
If you're a person, and I can't speak for the woman's experience, but for as far as the men go, if you're pursuing a thing, a career, a business, or even a better version of yourself, whatever that is, everybody around you is going to benefit from that. If you're in it may not be like, every single person is not here to create a business or to bring some sort of creative thing to the world. I mean, some people, their thing might be, I've had people tell me before, like, they just want to be the best parent they can be because that was not their experience. Their parent, for whatever reason, was not a good parent. So they want to be that person to their family. And frankly, I can't think of anything better to bring to the world than that. I mean,
Yeah.
the world, if the world would be a much better place if we had better parents. Let's just say that. So if your goal is to be a better parent, hey, I'm all for it, man. I personally can't relate to that because that's not my journey. I don't have children, so that's not my subjective journey. But I don't know, man. I feel like, I think you're right. If you do grow yourself, continue to improve yourself, I think if you're doing it the right way, everybody, maybe that's employees, maybe that's family, maybe that's, peers, business partners, whatever, spouses definitely, will improve will benefit from that, from your improvement.
Right. And, one of the things I hear from parents too is how difficult it is to raise children, especially these days, which I fully understand. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you are spot on right there, because the world you're raising kids today is different than the world we grew up in. And even as adults, as parents, we don't have all the keys to navigate
Mm-hmm.
what you guys are going through. You need to understand that. But their argument is that, well, they have these, the toxic friends at school, or the toxic teachers, or the toxic neighbors, or all of these different things that are planting seeds in my kid's life, which is true, which is true. However, if you teach values and standards to your children, those toxic seeds will never take soil,
Mm-hmm.
because you've already done the weeding and the fertilizing that needs to be done there. So as long as you are teaching standards, not expectations, don't teach expectations. And the reason I say that is because we as parents have expectations of our kids. I expect you to get good grades. You're a
Mm-hmm.
smart kid. I expect A's. The truth of the matter is, my kid isn't going to get all A's. Instead, if I teach standards of, you work hard, you apply yourself, you don't screw around. When it's time to do the homework, you do the homework. When you're in school, it's time to do school. Set those standards, and the grades will come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use the analogy of running. I used to do a lot of running, and I expect to win my age group in the half marathon. The chances are I'm not going to win my age group in the half marathon. But if I set that expectation, and the expectation isn't met, I'm going to be disappointed. The same is true with our kids. When my kids don't get the A, I'm disappointed, and now I'm angry at the kids. Running, if I don't get that expectation, I'm going to be disappointed in myself, and I'm going to be angry at people who don't deserve me to be angry at them. However, if I set a standard to take care of my body, if I set a standard to train the way I should train, if I set the standard to do the best that I possibly can and leave it all on the road, the chances are pretty good I might finish top at my age club. But if I don't, I've still met my standards, and I can still walk away from that saying, I did what I needed to do. Somebody else was better, and I'm okay with that.
And see, this is the exact point that I was making earlier with the identity thing, becoming the person who does that. I mean, it's one thing to have a goal to, win a half marathon, but it's another thing to become a person who does win the half marathon, because what does that mean? Like, those people who do that, they do things along the way that makes them that person. Sometimes they lose, sometimes they win, but they still showed up, and they, from their perspective, gave their best that they could at the time. And I think that's something that, going back to the parent thing, like I said, I'm not a parent. I can't really comment. I don't know. I'm not in that situation, but I am a son. And so one thing I do want to sort of comment on that is that I think we should, and this is just for every age group, I think we should just realize, and you hit on this also, that our parents, for the most part, most of them are just sort of doing the best that they can with the information they have at the time. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not, and I know some people unfortunately have really bad experiences with parents, and I'm very sorry for that. I think those people are sort of in a different space from where this conversation is. But I think in the most part, for the most part, uh, you know, our parents are just trying their best, man. Like people just try their best. Like you hear the thing, like parents are just, you know, kids with kids, you know, like, I
Yeah.
mean, I just think that just a little bit of that human, and that also too, having that little bit of compassion for this person, it also, you know, it goes to other areas of your life. You know, you meet a person in a coffee shop or something and they're rude to you. It's like, well, you know, this person must be having a bad day. It's got nothing to do with me. You know, I mean, it's because it's very easy to internalize that, especially I think from parents, from people who, who are supposed to be uh, mentors and guiders and lovers. Um, you know, people who love you. I think that's very easy to internalize, sort of what it looks like from the outside looking in. But at the end of the day, man, we're all just people. You know.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Um, and for most of us, we just do the best that we can, and that's all that we can do. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as your kids understand that, and you're on the same team, so communication is important. Um, and and then I think you're on the right track. These kids though that are not growing up in good environments. Sometimes, and more recently, I think I hear a lot of, well, now I'm living in trauma because I was abused, because my parents were abused, because their parents were abused, and now it's just generational trauma, and this is just something I have to live with. And I've actually had a couple clients with that whole thing, and the big question to ask them, or I guess not a question, but the biggest thing that they need to understand, first of all, before we can start laying out new groundwork, is that there's a difference between trauma, living in trauma, and a traumatic experience. You see, a traumatic experience is just a moment in time. We all have moments in time where we've experienced something negative in our life, whether it was from our parents, whether it was from a teacher, whether it was a crash on our bike, whatever it was. That's just a moment in time. Living with trauma is a choice.
Mm.
And here's what I mean by that. And not everybody loves me when I say that. And that's fair, because that goes against it. It twists your nervous system just a little bit when I say that. And they're like, oh, no, that's not true at all. But we as humans assign meaning to things. We have to. It helps us process the things going on in our life. That's just what we do. The meaning that we give something in our past, or let me say it like this: the moment we give meaning to something in our past will be the moment our past will become part of our future at some point. Think of it like this. Let me give you the flip example first. And lots of times people call these triggers. So a flip example is, imagine you get into your truck and you turn on the radio and it's an oldies station and this song comes on. For me, let me use me for example, because I'm going to date myself here. And a song comes on from the oldies channel, and my brain immediately takes me back to 1986. The windows are down in my car. I'm cruising Main Street. The beer is in the trunk. All the friends are crammed into the car, and we're having a great time. And in that moment, I feel good. I feel young again. Like, you can relate. You hear that song, and that song takes you back to a moment. You're like, yeah, yeah, we had a lot of fun back then. But then we come back to reality. And that's the flip side of the moment. See, we gave something a meaning, and now that meaning becomes part of our future at some point. Whatever the meaning is in our past, let's say our traumatic experience, we could give it a meaning that I was hurt, I was victimized, I was abused, I was taken advantage of, I was broken at the end. And if we give it that meaning, which is fair to give it that meaning, because it probably did hurt, it probably did break us in that moment. But as soon as we give it that meaning, that meaning is going to become part of our future at some point. So when we experience something through our senses and that emotion comes back to us, then we're going to begin reliving that experience, not just the experience, but the meanings that we have been giving that experience and the emotions that go with that. That's what living in trauma looks like. Now, is it a conscious choice? No, it's subconscious choice, but we could create a conscious choice out of it because we can go back to that meaning. And again, this is a longer coaching session
Mhm.
where this happens, but if we change the meaning to, I was stronger than I thought that I was, I survived that. I do have more resources than I thought that I did because I was able to reach out to some people. I was able to get through this. I was able to realize that that is not what my life is meant for. Now we've just changed the meaning. And again, it takes time to do this. But once we change that meaning, we can experience the same trigger. But now we have a different emotion coming forward. We still have the experience. That's never going to leave us. But now we've quit living in trauma.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's a really good way to put that. I think that meaning is the meaning that you give a thing is absolutely critical. Have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
No, I'm going to jot that down though.
Okay, yeah. So I talked about this on the podcast a while back. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. I think he was a psychologist. He was in the Nazi Germany concentration camp, and he actually was one of the few that survived. And he talked about giving a meaning to your suffering, giving a like he was basically looking for meaning for all this that was going on in the concentration camps. And I just think that meaning, whatever you give to that thing, is literally a fork in the road. That's the fork in the road moment because man, some things, if you first of all, it's very empowering to realize that you can give yourself the meaning of a thing. And that doesn't mean there's not things that you have to deal with, or maybe things that had to be healed from that, or things that had to be resolved because of that. But you can tell yourself, like, even if you have to go through that healing journey or resolve those things, like that, all that can be because you're supposed to be a person, like you said, in the future. The past becomes relevant to the future. And so, like, you give yourself that meaning. And I think I'm just thinking about situations back in my life, like giving myself a meaning to that. It becomes empowering. And then it's like, okay, well, it's my responsibility to make this experience, I don't want to say worth it, but, worthwhile, because like, I don't want to sit there and go through that for nothing, like I'm not going through like, and I certainly don't want to carry it around the rest of my life. I've talked about this story on the podcast. I'll tell it really quick. This is what I'm thinking about as I'm saying this. I was about 5 years ago, so somewhere like halfway in business where I'm at now. We had a big one of our biggest clients at the time, our first big client. We got them, had them a couple years. They changed ownership. Long story short, they let us go because, in their words, they were looking for something else that more services basically. And so I kind of had to catch myself, man, because for a while there, I was in that victim mode, like, oh, we've done all this good work and people are so pleased with everything. And somebody new came in and got rid of us. And then I kind of had to hit the brakes for a minute. I'm like, wait a minute, dude, like, what were you like? Were you comfortable? Because I was comfortable. I had people that relied on me, and I had to learn the hard way that as a leader, you need to be continuously growing, continuously improving. And so since then, I've been able to take that experience and optimize some things, and hopefully be in a better place because of it. But yeah, man, that's a dangerous road to go down when you're like, dude, this isn't my fault. Like, screw these guys, whatever. Like, that's not a road you want to go down, especially if you want to, like we talked about earlier, continuously improving yourself. So yeah, I think the meaning that you give something is absolutely 100%. First of all, it's like, it's empowering because you have that ability. And then it's like, you can make it worthwhile to improve from that. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's a lot of areas of your life. I mean, people with depression and anxiety, and they're like, well, I just have to live with this. This is my diagnosis, and
Mm,
these are all the pills I have to take, and so I just learned to live with it. Why? Why?
yeah.
When you could be free of it, and free of it really very quickly. I mean, when I work with people, I figured out a system that is very effective, very efficient, and we can deal with this very quickly. Now, what I've discovered too in working with all these different aspects of our life, whether it's depression or anxiety, whether it's trauma, whether it's growing into a new person, just to level up in life, if nothing else, is that it's something I started to call toxic relationship syndrome. Now, what this means is, let's say it's a person with depression, anxiety, fears, trauma. Just name something in your mind, doesn't matter. People who live with this every day of their life are literally married to it. They know exactly what's going to set it off. They know exactly how it's going to feel, how long it's going to last, what coming off of it feels like, what living off of it feels like, and how soon they can get back into that drug of whatever they are going through. And just the thought of living without that is scary
Hmm.
because they've been living with it for so long. Living without depression is scary to some people because I don't know what that's going to be like. I've never been there. One of the women that I worked with said that her friends called her professionally depressed because she knew exactly when it was coming, exactly how long it's going to last, exactly how she's going to act, all of this stuff. I said, "What? Time out, because you just said it right there, And once we began to start to wade through the water of the unknown, they realized it's not as scary after all. In fact, I just did a video on it. I posted it yesterday on Facebook and TikTok. It's about the fear of the unknown. And as we go through the unknown is a scary place because we don't know what that's like to be there. But if we reframe it just a little bit, the unknown is actually known, because if we start going into something that is unknown, scary, what happens to us physiologically? Our palms start to sweat, our heartbeat races, our brain is starting to go a million miles an hour, anticipating everything that could go wrong. You see, we know that's going to happen. And so when you venture into something unknown, something scary, a new venture in your life, it's not as unknown as you think it is, because we know how our body is going to respond to it. We know how emotionally we're going to respond to it, and we can prepare for that. And if we can prepare for that aspect of it, the mind's going to follow.
Hmm. I like that. I like a lot of what we talked about today. Actually, we got into some pretty good topics. I am unfortunately going to have to wrap up here in a few minutes. Did we not hit on anything that you wanted to touch on? Was there anything that we missed?
There was, like I told you before we started, like, remind me where we're going. Let's just go. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, no, I think we hit on some really good stuff here today.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, like I said, you mentioned the tangents earlier, and I'm like, I'm all for the tangents. I've been known to go off on some tangents. But I mean, it's also too, man. It's like, you know, I've talked about this before, something similar to this. Like there's 1,000 podcasts you can do with, who knows who, and to have this exact conversation is only it can only happen with me specifically and you specifically in this moment in time, because just like, that we're having this conversation, we have thoughts that come up and they're like, hey, how about this question or whatever, and it's like it's almost like the possibilities are endless on the conversations that could be had. And that's one of the reasons I like doing this in a free form format, because we could probably have a conversation 100 different times, have 100 different conversations.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's relevant though. I think what we touched on today is really powerful. I mean, I think identity and living with this, like identity and attaching meaning to things, there's probably not too many more life lessons that are more valuable than that, because those two things it filters, not filters. It maybe well, I guess maybe it does filter how you see your life. Like it's like it's like the lens of how you see like what your life is when you know who you are, and the thing that is on the outside, what this thing means or why this thing's happening. I think that literally gives you a sense of direction for your life, or at the very least you can navigate, where you're at or where you want to be, based on those two things.
Yeah. And at the very least, follow the old man's advice. And the sooner you figure it out, the better off you'll be. Are the answers going to be right all the time? No, of course not. We're all going to still make mistakes and still struggle with stuff. But take a stand with who you are and what you represent and move forward with that and navigate it as you move. I mean, it's a living, when I'm writing a book that's not finished, I call it a living work, right?
Mm.
Because it's constantly changing and shifting. We are living works because we are constantly changing and shifting. New information in, old information out, and all of this stuff. But take a stand and just move forward. It's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's no coincidence that some of the great prophets of history, the great, army generals, the Stoics, and those kind of people, they journaled and they explored themselves, and it was like this, their whole life was like this whole thing of like, finding out who you are, and it's just like it sounds so like, would you say like find who you are, figure out who you are? I just picture a guy like on a hillside meditating or whatever, and it's just like, but I mean, those things is real, I mean, there's a reason it's so powerful. Yeah, I don't know, man. This has been great. I got to listen back to this one. Uh, where can you be found? Do you have social media or website or anything?
I do. On I've got them written down because sometimes I don't remember exactly what they are. So on, oh man, where am I here? I don't even know what I did with it. On Facebook, you can search for Kelly Meyer, but it's, oh, there. KAN, I'll write it out for you. KAN.DA.125. It's facebook.com/that. Otherwise, just search
Okay.
for Kelly Meyer. You'll see me. Otherwise, on Facebook, you can find us at Project Find Your Fire. TikTok, I'm Kelly Meyer, PFYF, like the hat.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you go to our website, projectfindyourfire.com, you'll have links to all of those.
Okay. And if you want to, if you can send me some of those, you might have already, but if you send them to me, I'll definitely attach them. And they'll go out everywhere with the video.
Awesome.
So one last thing that I usually ask everybody, and I'm sure, I don't know, you may have already touched on it already. If you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, your speaking career or education. What do you think is one of the most important lessons, most valuable lessons?
There are so many lessons, and lots of times they'll just come to me here and there, and then I'll write them. My office is full of whiteboards, and so I'll just write it there just as a reminder to myself. Probably the old man was huge for me, in helping me discover who I was, and who I might become, and where I fit into this life, and where life fits into me. Another one, just a very short story that is a reminder for me. I'll make this quick because I know we have to wrap up. Is that I grew up in the Nebraska, South Dakota area where we have a lot of Indian reservations. And I have been told that sometimes at night, the men of these terribly poverty stricken reservations will go out and hunt slow elk. Slow elk is a cow. So they'll go out with their pickups, find a cow, kill it, and bring it back and butcher it. Now, what they do is I'm not sure that the cow is legally harvested. I can neither confirm nor deny such. But they come home and they butcher the cow, and then the next thing they do the next morning is deliver the meat to a little bit to every household in town. Now, it's not a lot of meat, but it's something, and that's all that they can afford to do.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to myself sometimes is, what is my slow elk? I mean, these men are risking something, their freedoms, their whatever it is. They're putting their own livelihood on the line in order to provide for everybody else. They're not providing for themselves. They're providing for everybody else around them. So what is my slow elk? What am I bringing to the table? What am I risking? Am I risking anything? Am I willing to risk something for somebody else? What is my slow elk? That's my question for myself.
That's a good one. What is your slow elk? And that kind of makes me, it brings us back to our conversation earlier. Like if you're improving yourself, if you're pursuing the thing that you should pursue, everybody should benefit, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's incredible, man. I actually think a big problem that we're having today, especially on the men's issues, is a lot of us don't have that direct. We don't know what that elk is. We don't have this thing to pursue, which means that we spend energy in all these other ways, and sometimes negative ways, negative pathways. I mean, if you talk to anybody who's had any sort of addiction, a lot of them will tell you that it came from a lack of direction or a lack of purpose. And then a lot of times, and when you talk to these people to get out of these addictions, they'll tell you one thing that got them out of that was a pursuit of something higher than themselves.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's incredibly important. It's very, very important question. I need to ask myself that question, actually.
And I think you hit on another problem that men have here is we live in an instant society now with the digital age and now the AI that we talked about earlier. And if you think about the greatest things in your life, it wasn't achieving the goal. It was actually doing the work to get to the goal, because that's what created a different person within inside you. It wasn't the goal itself. It was the person you became during the chase. It's not the kill, it's the thrill of the chase, right?
Right.
And now in an instant society, we've lost the thrill of the chase. We have instant kill, instant kill, instant kill. We don't have a pursuit any longer, which inhibits who we are becoming as men and women too.
Yeah. Well, that pursuit or that hunt is 100% needed. 100%. I mean, because I think, regardless of what it is, I think just an immediate result, I think, is very dangerous. Whatever. I mean, whether that's financial, drugs, women, whatever it is, just an immediate result of that and no pursuit of that thing. I think that's very, very dangerous for all of us, men, women, society, everybody.
For sure. Man, I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours.
For sure. Yeah, we probably could. I tell you, man, I like, I'm going to have to arrange my booking, because I think sometimes when I tell people like an hour and a half or whatever, 2 hours, well, I actually went away from the 2 hour booking, because a lot of the times I wasn't, we would barely get an hour, which is fine. But it was just kind of blocking out a huge chunk of time for both of us. I would tell somebody 2 hours, we'd talk an hour, and so, but yeah, I guess, I don't know. I guess like the more I do this, the more conversations I have, the more interested I get in things. It's just, yeah, I agree. I think we could probably, go for another 2 hours. But a lot of people too, that I bring on here, that's a big time commitment, and like, I think it might be a little bit easier for us to say this now. Cause like before we started, we didn't know where we were going to go. Like if I told you, hey man, let's talk for 3 hours, you're like, well, I'll give you an hour. But yeah, we could definitely set it up again and do it, go for another hour and a half, whatever it is. So
yeah, whatever you want to do, I'm open to anything.
Well, I definitely do appreciate your time and insight here today. We've covered a lot of things, and like I said, going to have to do some self exploration on this one. I need to find out what my elk is. I mean, I have a general direction, but I want to know specifically, what it is. So, but I'm going to stop the video. I'll explain to you about the upload situation, all that good stuff. But yeah, definitely appreciate your time here today. Hey, listen, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful or beneficial, you can subscribe, follow, interact, and see more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.